All right. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to come on and have a conversation for Black Artist Voices. I am very excited to talk to both of you. So let's start with some introductions first. So let's start with Judith Moreland. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you are up to in the artist's world?
Okay. My name is Judith Moreland. Everybody calls me Judy. I do too. I am, let's see, my connection to Cap Stage is that I've directed 2 shows there now. I directed my first show there in 2017 and OCTOROON by Branden Jenkins, which was a fantastic experience of one of my all-time favorite plays. And then I came back in 2019. Can't believe it's already a year. It was a year ago right now. I directed a play called Between Riverside and Crazy by Stephen Adley Girgis, and I had a wonderful time with that as well. I was just so fortunate to have 2 fantastic casts working on 2 terrific plays. And that's one of the hats I wear. I'm also an actor. That's how I know Adrian. And I was a teacher, actually. I should say that because I was Adrian's teacher way back when I was actually younger than Adrian. I don't know how that worked. Only he's older than me, but I was so I teach as well. I know Adrian and Michael Stevenson from American Conservatory Theater, and I was one of Adrian's teachers there. And I'm an actor as well. And you asked, how am I staying creative? Well, since you can't act really and can't direct, I am a member of a small theater company in Los Angeles where I live, which is called the Road Theater. I directed a play there also last year, and they invited me to join their artistic board. And I said yes, and I'm so glad I did. I'm not usually a joiner, but this was just so fortunate because it's kept me creatively going. And we can talk about how that's happened in especially the last 5 or 6 months. But I was very fortunate. So I do have an artistic home and I do have some creative outlets as we wait for all of this craziness to go back to normal.
Yes, indeed. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Adrian Roberts.
Hello.
Yes, haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
So Adrian and I worked together. That was that about 3 years ago now? Something like that?
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
2 summers ago, yeah. So we did a play together called Zenith for SF Playhouse.
Right.
And so yeah, but you've worked with Cap Stage before, so you definitely worked in Sacramento. You work a lot in the Bay Area. Tell us about what you are up to.
So my name is Adrian Roberts, and the shows I've done at Cap Stage. Well, I worked at Cap Stage. There was a boat in Old Town Sac in the river.
Oh my God!
The old
really?
Mark Twain boat.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first play I did there was a play called First Person Shooter, and which we originated actually in SF Playhouse. We did it at SF Playhouse first. And then a year later, I did it at Capitol Stage. And then after that, I did Jesus Off the A Train there. And then in the newer space off of J Street, did a new play called How to Use a Knife. So that one. And then, and just doing the hustle as an actor, just working in the Bay. And the last show I did in the Bay was a Berkeley rep called Becky Nurse. I did it with Pamela Reed, which was awesome experience. And then before that, I did the Scottish play playing the title role at African American Shakes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And that was a really great experience. And I've just I've been blessed to play some really good stuff, work with some good people, worked at Cal Shakes, Aurora, trying to keep it going before all this hit. I was gonna go down to LA again and start making feelers and starting to infiltrate again because I'd lived there for about 6.5 years. Left there, went up to Ashland, then just stayed in Ashland for about 3 seasons. And then after that, moved back down to LA and came back to the Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's the journey. And right now, during this time, really what I wanted to do is like continue at least my exercise regimen because all that kind of stuff, you know, I can't go to the gym.
You're not doing like Rocky style workouts at your
yeah,
your house,
I mean,
just like
getting the old. Well, one day, like I watched this YouTube thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and like, you know how he just has this way about him. Ever since I saw Pumping Iron, I was just like, this guy's really super smart, but I just get a kick out of him. And so he said this things like this: 24 hours in the day, you can work out for 1. And I was like, yeah, I could work out for, you know, so it's that kind of stuff. And learning to play the guitar. I think I'm starting to learn how to paint. You know, I'm just trying to do something because I think as I get older, that's where my artistic stuff will go anyway, because I just need to feed something else besides acting. Not into directing at all, but I like, I think I have an affinity for colors, and I love, when I lived in New York, I loved going to the Met. Those are my favorite things to do, just go to the Met and just spend 2-3 hours there.
Me too, I love it too.
And just branch out that way, you know? And so I've been doing some play readings. That's something for the SF Playwrights Festival. Just got a call to do another one. So we'll see, you know, you just got, but like I was telling Judith and Michael before we even got on doing this, was like, it's just even hard some days to even get inspired to be creative, you know, because it's just, I mean, I had some plans, like a lot of people this year, especially after the play in Berkeley. And then all that just stopped. And, you know, wow, you spent all this time, like, trying to get to this point. And now we're like,
I mean, this is exactly, so this is precisely what everybody is dealing with. And I think we have to ultimately be okay with wherever we're at, with not being okay some days, with not feeling inspired, with, you know, kind of letting things go for a few days or a week or 2 weeks, and then jumping back on the horse, you know, answering the call whenever it comes. I mean, what else can you do? What about you? Have you felt that struggle, Judy, with like all that is going on with regards to the pandemic and protests and the election and all of that? Do you find that it's distracting from your creativity, or is it feeding it in any way?
I think it's kind of all of the above. I totally agree with Adrian. There are times where I'm like, I can muscle through this, and it's a time to be a little more introspective and figure out, how do you want to create? And there are days where if I make it through the day, I feel good. If, you know, it's my dad who turned 95 this year. I looked at him a lot because, you know, a Black man who was born in 1925, he's literally seen it all. So he's really, and he's doing great, by the way. And his brain is great. I really hope I inherited those genes. But I turn to him all the time and I say, Dad, what are we going to do? It's just so much craziness. And he said, he keeps telling me, he said, it's been worse. This too shall pass. We are strong people. Just be kind to yourself, be gentle, be kind to others. It is an extraordinary time, but if you just learn patience, we as a group, as a culture, as a country, as a people, we will make it through this. Certainly, my dad says, you know, as Black people, we have surmounted so much greater obstacles that this should be, he said, this is a walk in the park. You know, these are quality problems. So just be kind and know that this too shall pass. And so that's really what gets me through those times where I'm like, I don't know where to turn or what to do. Or is it, I sometimes like to say, is it ever going to get any better? Everything that you just mentioned, not just the pandemic, but the political division in this country that just, and the brutality, and just sometimes you're just like, I can't believe that we're still here and this is still going on. So,
Yeah, I did the play Mountaintop, and I spent a lot of time doing research. And so Judy's right. You know, her dad is right. You know, my stepdad is 88, and he says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I remember going through the research, and I remember after doing the play the first couple of weeks of the run, I remember going back to the apartment after the show, and I want to share this with a couple of people who came to see the show. Like, I would go through a depression because when you study like guys like John Lewis and Martin Luther King and all those guys, and even the white folks who helped the civil rights movement, it was worse. Like when you really do the reading, but my depression was just like, I was like, this guy did all this by 30 what? And then listening to Barack's eulogy of John Lewis the other day, when he said John Lewis was reading this at 25 and doing this at 27. So I would come home and I'd like sit there and go, what the hell have I done? You know, really and truly. What have I put my life on the line for anything? And the experience was amazing because, you know, all his papers are down there at Stanford because I did it at Theater Works. And people would come up to me after the show and just like, they would think that you have the answers. First of all, it's a great compliment because you feel like you did your job, right? But the second time they're asking you questions and you're like, and I felt this back then, and I did this play like, it's almost over 7 years ago now. And the questions that they were asking then were asking now. And people were, even with the Barack presidency, people were kind of disturbed where the country was going. You know, those undercurrents that are there now, that are now full blown.
Oh, I was gonna say they're not undercurrents now.
Right, yeah.
Undercurrents
and
then maybe, but now
but
they're out there.
not even for the, and they're not undercurrents for those of us who are paying attention, you know. But that depression was about how am I gonna live the rest of my life? If this guy can do all that in 12 years, if John Lewis can have a life like he has for the life he's had, what the hell am I doing? I mean, I go up there and do skits, you know what I mean? And it's like,
but it's,
and
well,
I know, but you think about it. But that's the thing, you're right.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
And you go, but then you go, no, we're storytellers. We tell stories.
And look at the story you just told. People were moved by what you did. You affected people's lives. And I totally hear what you're saying, Adrian, because I ask that question all the time, especially as an actor. Sometimes you feel like it's such a selfish profession because you think about yourself and how you look and trying to get the job.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah, but then you do a piece, and I've had experience like that too. I did a play a few years ago where I had the same response of the art that I created. People would come up to me after the play and they would talk to me as if we had a shared experience, and they would tell me how moved they were and how it affected their lives and made them think of things. I've had a couple of experiences in theater that way. And that's, I think that there's nothing more important than that. And that's why theater is, we always come back to theater. You know, it would be nice to make a lot of money in Hollywood, but that connection, and that's why the pandemic is so hard, because you can't, even when you do the readings on Zoom and everything, you don't have that personal connection that you do with the audience when you were in the same space and you're sharing that. I miss that so much.
I think we all do. I do for sure. And I know that, I mean, I've had a few conversations recently that have really opened my eyes and brought me around to, I think, instead of resisting, to embracing what is, which is that we have moved to a different space and a different platform in which to perform art. And so while we don't have that same connection and that live experience and shared relationship with the audience, there are greater opportunities to reach more people because of the fact that it is, we're on a Zoom or an online platform, so you can reach more people have access. And and then sort of selfishly, there are opportunities to work on things that are just simply because there's a camera. So there's, there are opportunities to do things in there. I've seen a couple things that I've seen. I've been watching a lot of stuff. Also looking for inspiration, as Adrian talked about, but also looking for opportunity, like who's doing stuff that's great? Who are there people that I could connect with? Or, there's a way in which people are sort of more accessible because you don't have to be in the same base, in the same play with them to connect with them necessarily. I mean, I can I could watch something and then reach out to that artistic director and, because I'm be like, hey, I'm here at home, I'm available, to work on something or whatever it is. But it really is a tricky time. And going back to what you were saying, I really appreciate your honesty, Adrian, about the previous experience you had and sort of the depression that you went through. But even like, I'll just out you for a second, just before we got on this call, it seemed we're kind of like, hey, how are you doing? And just being honest about kind of where you're at. Things feel maybe a bit heavy. And some of the things that I've been watching are, like I just started watching, oh my gosh, it was a DC, it's a show, DC Marvel. It stars Regina King.
Watchmen.
Who knows it?
Oh, Watchmen. Yeah.
Watchmen. Thank you.
Yeah.
I started watching that.
Yeah.
Which is something, which is great. I mean, I've just watched episode 1. Can't wait to check out episode 2. But it's great. But at the same time, I mean, I have to admit, I'm feeling overloaded by all this racial stuff. I really am. And I feel a bit guilty for feeling that way. I feel like, what is my responsibility in all of this in terms of being a voice, having a voice, expressing myself about all the things that are happening. I am somebody who, I'm an actor, I direct as well, and I'm a writer. And one of the things that I've always, in my writing, I haven't really wanted to, it wasn't the first thing that came to mind or came to page for me to address things that have to do with like race relations or my place in the world as a Black woman. In fact, very much the opposite. I've always been, somebody who's more like, well, I don't define myself as like, that's not the first way I define myself. I'm just like, I'm a woman. And then, so wanting to write things in which I, embody whatever that character is, and it doesn't have to do with race. Well, now, somehow in the last year, it seems to be all I have to say, is writing stuff related to that. So I'm just trying to go with it. And because I do have things to say, I have a lot to say. And so just, but it's a lot of, I do feel burdened now by the number of things that are happening. And while I want the work that I do, whether it's writing, acting, directing, I want it to have impact, but let me let that sentence stand. I want the work that I do to have an impact, we all do. And I want the impact, I think I do, to be broader than specifically talking about things that have to do with race. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Adrian? What is your specific experience with whether it's like roles that you tend to get cast in, or projects that people call you for? Like, where does race come into play with all of that, and how do you feel about it?
Well, despite all this, I think I'm in a good place because I think out of this, some good creativity is going to happen. I think the theater there's some going to be new great stuff that comes out of this. We might have to go back to the format of like live TV theater. You know what I mean? Like filming the thing. I don't know. Talking to some of my friends who are working on projects in LA and across the country doing film stuff. People are finding ways, and that's what's great about it. You know, people will find a way. They're not going to keep us down. We're all creative people, and we all need to do it. So eventually, and I think out of this, some changes will probably need to be made will probably happen, and there might be a more equitable, playing ground for all of us, as opposed to this stuff that's going on in the country. Like I said, this has been going on forever.
Yep.
So I know how I carry myself. I know when I walk into the room, whether they say it's non-traditional casting, whether I'm going out for an August Wilson piece, I'm going to go into the room the way I always go in the room, that I'm the best actor for the job. Whether I get it or not is not up to me. I've lived in New York. I've lived in LA. I was a reader in New York. I've seen how things happen. I see how, I've been told certain things like we all have, right? I told you, I can say a recent story, but I'll have to out some people, but so I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? So it's just like,
come on, can you tell the story without names?
You just go about it as, I don't know. I think I'm from Trinidad, as your, heritage
Yes,
is.
Trinidad, yes.
So growing up, so moving to this country, I saw both sides because we moved to California first, and then we lived down south of Louisiana. So I saw a lot of things. And not that Trinidad doesn't have its racism or classism, but I never felt when I came here that I was quote unquote a minority, that I was lesser than. I would walk into any job, audition, or private sector job trying to make a living, to support myself. And because I did carry myself that way, I know I did lose some jobs. You know what I mean? Because I'm not asking for a handout. I'm not asking, this is America. I want my 4 balls and 3 strikes. Just give me my chance,
Yeah.
But what's coming out now is that what people are realizing, and tragically it took this poor man's death to make people kind of see deeper things, that's going on in a society. Yeah, to make everybody, I got friends calls from so many people like, how you doing? How you doing? And it's just like, it's like you live this, I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. After a while, you see what your dad goes through, your grandfather goes through, and you walk on their shoulders. You know what I mean? I've done shows I remember doing Fences with Stephen Anthony and Carl Lumley, and just listening to their stories, right? And just listening to what they've been through. So when I go on stage or get a job on TV, those are the guys I carry with me because I'm not there without them, and that's the legacy. And so what I try to do to bypass all that BS is when I'm in the room, I just try to be fierce. I may not get the job, but I'm gonna make them think about me. And I'm not and I've gone out for stuff where I'm up against white actors, and you try to tell people, it's like, just don't call me if you're doing Fences. Don't call me if you're doing, Lynn Nottage.
Yep.
Call me if you're doing another play that maybe you're not thinking about that character as a character, not just a Black actor, another actor of color. Just think about it. The world the way it is now. I'm watching this sci-fi show on Prime called Expanse, and just the cast, just seeing the cast, just makes my heart sing. Because it's just like, it is, that's it. That's what the world is. But and theater has a long way to go. Hollywood has a long way to go. Theater practices it too. And you just, it's just like, and getting into ACT, I had to know Shakespeare, Chekhov. You know this, Judy, right? We got to know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then be judged, right? And so you're so, and I tell young Black actors all the time, I mean, if you get some training and you're out there, I mean, know that I felt like when I came out of there, I studied some more in New York, but I'm like, I'm ready. You know what I mean? I can, because I don't know, I'm just one of the few who got this kind of training. I'm going to use it. And the irony is when you get out there, you're going out for like thug number 1, thug number 2
Yeah.
to get going.
Yeah, that's changing. I
And
really
you go,
think that's
when I go to
changing.
school for all that training, and it is changing
Yeah.
because, I mean, I can tell you, when I first time I saw Idris Elba on Luther, not even Luther, on
The Wire,
the show back in the day, The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
When you see yourself,
yeah,
then you know.
yeah.
But when I saw Luther and I saw the way he emoted and the way he did stuff, I'm like, oh my God, you never see a brother do that ever, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear the story how hard it was for him to get it made. You know, people go, oh, he's up there and he's doing his thing. It's like, all right, talk to the bro.
Yeah.
And you'll understand that he had to move mountains to make that show, and to be the lead. Because you know, when they first approached you, it was like, well, you know, because that's how it is. But I tend not to get depressed. I just have that warrior mentality about it and just keep pushing.
Well, that's why you're so successful, Adrian. Because otherwise, if you stop and think about it for a second, you won't be able to get out of bed in the morning. And that's what I actually love so much about Black culture and Black excellence. Is just that, given all of this, the fact that we've all achieved what we have achieved, it's extraordinary. When, you know, as the old Chris Rock joke is, you know, if you're mediocre, you know, a Black person, to be a president, you have to have you have to be A+. But if you're a C student like George Bush, you could be president of the United States. It's so I love that. And I love hearing what your resume was, Adrian. I'm just thrilled that you got to do the Scottish play. I wish I would have loved to have seen it.
Well, that was the thing. I remember there was a question in the talk back. This young Black woman, you know, she was a student, and it, like, in my heart, she was just like, who can I look to? It was like the first time she saw somebody do Shakespeare, even, you know, a Black person do Shakespeare, and she was just like, look at what TV shows, because I've never seen, you know, I'm like, she asked me, she goes, what did you look at? And I just, you know, there was Sydney, there were so many people. I was just like, I mean, my guy was Woody Strode, because I loved action movies, you know what I mean? So it was, but I was thinking, I said, look at the roles that Sidney Poitier was playing back then. Yeah. Just think about it. Right? And so, and then reading his story, A Measure of a Man, and you know, it's like, that's what I said. So whatever little bit of hardship I'm going through right now,
it's nothing.
I ain't go through that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And just the response we got from that audience member, I've had that happen as well. When I played Lady M, you know, and that was over at Sacramento Theater Company, and so we did a lot of school shows, and so it was really a great thing for so many young people to see a Black woman in a lead role in a play that didn't have anything to do with race, and to be playing the queen. And so, I mean, because that matters, you know, we look for ourselves in theater, and there is this kind of vicious cycle that happens when people of color don't see themselves reflected on stage, with particular theater companies, let's say. So they kind of get shy to go and audition at those companies, because they're like, oh no, they don't. I understand they cast, and I know that they don't, you know, their level of diversity isn't quite there, or whatever. So it becomes this perpetual self-fulfilling kind of cycle that would take the people on the inside to break that cycle, make that decision to be inclusive, to call in an inclusive and diverse group of people for all the plays that they're doing, not just like, oh, well, we've got, we've got that one place for you
Yep.
folks over here. So we'll call you in for those roles.
And that just,
Typically
that just happened to
we're
me with,
looking for, actors of color.
yeah, that just happened with Becky Nurse. I remember because Sarah Rule wrote it. I remember one day on break we're talking, and she was just like, I didn't even think about. She goes, when you did your audition, I just thought you were the best guy for the job.
That's great.
And she goes, but I didn't, when I wrote the play, because it took place in a certain part of Massachusetts, and you know what I mean, the demography of the population, and I remember, and I was honest with her, and I remember doing the audition, and this is why I said, I'm like, look at this. This is why I said it. I mean, I just said it. He was very honest. But I'm like, but I still prepared, right? But in the back of my mind, I saw the breakdown of the character, I saw where it was taking place, and I'm just okay, this is what I'm asking for. Let me audition for something that is not usually something I get, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then I auditioned for it, and I think the freedom of just doing the audition and just not worrying about it. But I just have to be honest about what I thought, because that's what, you're like, you don't usually get up. That's the thing. It's the opportunity.
Yep.
I wouldn't have said that if in my career I was always getting those opportunities. I'm not an A-list actor. I'm not an A-list movie star. So those guys get, like Idris or Don Cheadle, these guys can get those kind of roles now. But I'm not there. So how do I make my mark doing different kind of roles, but not just being like, okay, we're doing August Wilson this year. Are you available? Or are you doing this year? Are you available? And it's like, well, what else you got in your season?
Well, yeah. Well, let me tell you a story now,
right?
because
and then you ask.
Yeah, let's hear it.
This is what I was kind of alluding to when I was asked to join the artistic board of the Road
Theater.
Theater.
I want to hear about
that. Because this was the theater is 29 years old. They just had their 29th anniversary. And when I first moved back to LA, because I'm from LA. When I first moved back to LA, I had a couple of friends, white friends, who were members of the company, and they would invite me to come see their shows. And I went. The shows were all white. And I went a few times, and I would pay my money and watch. And I was an actor, and I would watch my friends get a lot of work. And one day I thought, well, why am I paying money to a theater that would never hire me as an artist? So I stopped going. And I hadn't been in years. And about 2 years ago, someone reached out to me to direct this play. And the play is called At the Table. And it's about a Black woman. I always call it, it's like the Big Chill for the Gen X generation. That's exactly what it is. So it's a Black woman who went to college with a lot of white friends, and they've stayed friends after college. They're in their 30s, and they all go up to this house in the Catskills. And the Black woman invites a friend from work who happens to be Black. And the friend, so he's the outsider, he comes in and he watches the dynamics, and he says to his friend, the Black woman, why do you put up with this BS from your white friends? They don't treat you with respect. And she's like, what are you talking about? And it just kind of catapults her into just rethinking her friendships and seeing how she's treated, because she now has an outside pair of eyes. And just, it's a really interesting play. So it's lovely. So when they sent the script to me, I was shocked that this theater would do this play. And so when I went in for the meeting with the artistic directors, they asked, well, what did you think? And I said, well, frankly, I'm shocked that this theater is doing this play. And I told them the story I just told you. I said, I used to go, and it's always been white. This theater is known as the White Theater. And these two artistic directors, who were white, they said, we know we've had that reputation. We want to change that. And I'm sorry you haven't been coming to the theater for the last 4 or 5 years, because you would see that it has changed. So I took that. We did the play. It was a wonderful success. They asked me to join the board, and I thought, you know what? If they are actually serious about wanting to be more inclusive, and if that's why they're asking me to join the board, I definitely have some ideas. I said this to them. I said, if you are serious about it, I'd love to join your board. It's going to be difficult for you, so just know that. And they said, yes, we're open to that. And then, as you know, with the murder of George Floyd, suddenly there have been these reverberations in American theater. And there was that petition, I'm sure you guys knew about it, or maybe you signed it, the Dear White Theater petition. I signed it saying you guys you need to check yourselves now. And so all this happened while this particular theater, the Road Theater, was trying to figure out what is our next season. And then of course the pandemic happened. And we, every year we do a playwrights festival where we do about 30 plays that have been unpublished or never performed in Los Angeles. And we do a festival for about 3 weeks. We moved the festival online. We did 25 plays. And just as this Black Lives Matter was starting to reverberate through the American theater community, to the credit of this theater and this artistic board, they said, yes, here's our opportunity to be more inclusive of casting. So we cast actors who were the best actors for the job. We were pro actor of color. So we tried to get actors who were not necessarily a part of our company, but actors who looked like America to play a variety of roles, not just the person of color or the Black best friend, but playing leads and just whatever. We had writers of color, we had directors of color. I directed a play, and Adrian, I heard what you said, don't just think of me for the Black part. And as a director, it's like, don't think of me as just directing the Black play. I can direct everything. So since I was on the artistic board, the first thing they said to me, God bless them, is, here's the Black play. Do you want to direct it? And I said, no, but here's a white play. I didn't say the white part, but I said, here's a play with 3 white characters. That's the play I want to do. And I got to do it because I was on the board. And so it was just, so all that to say is that that's why I'm saying that things are changing. It really, it's such a cliche, but it really comes from the moment, and we are at an inflection point, but it's also putting people who look like us and who represent us in the decision-making seats. So because there were a couple of people of color on the board and we had a receptive board, we were able to accomplish so much. And it was fantastic. And the feedback we got from the audiences was phenomenal. And a lot of it was, you could tell that they were surprised that they saw some of these people who looked like us in some of these roles, but it was also audiences who were thrilled to see that. The playwrights were thrilled, kind of like what you said, Adrian. So many playwrights have said, when I wrote the play, I just didn't think, but you brought something to the role, or that actor brought something to the role that made it more than what I had written. So that's why I'm actually kind of cautiously optimistic right now. We just finished this online playwrights festival a few weeks ago, so we're still on the high. We had, like you were saying, Atim, it's the great part about Zoom is that you reach an audience that you never would have reached before.
Yeah, much wider audience. Are any of those plays still available?
No, unfortunately, we just took them all down because you have to make deals with equity and SAG. They all just came down last Saturday. But we did 25 different plays, and we had 18,000 views. 18,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. 6 countries.
That's wonderful.
And it was a fundraiser for the theater. It was the biggest fundraiser in the history of the theater. It was unbelievable.
Well, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for any theater company in the past. You look at some of these seasons, some of these theater companies, you're like, what the hell year are you living in? Absolutely. I mean, we have so much awesome stuff. There's so many different cultures. There's so many different stories to be told. And then when you see some of these museum pieces that they keep recycling, and you're just like, are you kidding me? And then I worked all over the country. I'm telling you, you hardly see any people of color in the administration office.
Yes, that has to change.
That has to change. You're working in some of these, and then, so when you're coming to do, and then it's like, what? So Black History Month, and you're going to do, the Black plays, or you're going to do the Latino plays in this part of the year, and you're going to do the Asian plays. Yeah. But there's nobody in the office looks like anybody. There's nobody representing. And so I'm with Judy. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm just like, I'm not, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not letting them off the hook. You know what I
No,
mean? Because it's just like
Yeah, I don't
they.
think Judy is either, but I
No,
definitely
no,
am.
no,
I'm
she's
also
not. I'm
in
just
that
saying it's
camp
just like
where I
these.
feel
It's
like
just
there's
like
no
in this day and
excuse.
age. Yeah, there's no
absolutely.
excuse.
Yeah.
There's
And that's
none.
what's one of the reasons why I started directing is exactly your experiences, Adrian. I would go in for things, I would get called in for the same thing all the time. And on those rare instances where I was called in for something else, I was like, I know I'm not going to get this job. And it's liberating because you can just go in and do an awesome job at the audition because you have no expectation of it going any further. And those are some of my favorite auditions because, as you said, you're like, you leave the room and you give them something to think about. Even though they won't cast you, you give them something to think about.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I started directing is I got tired of not being in charge and working with mediocre directors who only got the job because they've been working at that theater forever and another theater had hired them. I just got tired of working with those same 15, 20
Oh,
people.
I saw that when I was a reader in New York. I mean, I think that was one of the best jobs I've ever had. I mean, as soon as the casting director, you might know her, Judy, Harriet Bass.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, do you?
She just liked me. She liked my work, and Harriet, she thought it was a great little part-time job for me to have when I was living in New York, and it was a coup because you're exactly right. I learned about directors. I learned about how actors can ruin a job, how you can get a job, how incestuous it is, how kind of like high school it is, and all those times that you as an acting teacher or Harold Surratt, one of one of your colleagues, or Larry Hecht, or anybody would say, you go in there, don't take it personally. And I remember as a young actor, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's all personal. But when I got that reader job, I was like, no, you just got to go in there and just do your job because unless you have a director with a vision and who's not afraid of talent, who's not afraid of casting it the way he or she wants, it's very rare. And so there was a kind of freedom in learning that. I started booking, right? Because I just, you just learn.
Yeah.
You're reading with people and you just see how the system works. And I remember in New York, one time I went out for one of my favorite plays ever, Cyrano de Bergerac. I mean, that's a role I want to play when I get a little older. And I went out for Christian. I mean, I was perfect. It was the right age and everything. And I remember, and it was in New York, and I remember walking into the audition, and literally before I even did anything, the guy was just like, he was a director. I mean, he was just like, what role are you auditioning for? And I said, Christian. And they kind of giggled. That was one of those experiences. It's just like,
oh, okay.
And you're like, so for me, New York, I will always love New York as for what I went through as a young actor, because you get those kind of experiences, and either you're gonna like crawl up in a field position and like never do this again, or you just get a kind of a good, healthy chip on your shoulder, and you just go in there and you just like I tell young actors all the time, doesn't matter what color they are, I'm like, you got your 5-10 minutes, just do your thing. Yeah, because most of the time they don't want you, so just do
exactly. Yeah,
it really is a liberating kind of thing, just to go in there and just let it all hang out. Because give a performance, because like I said, I learned from being a reader. A lot of them you got to hit them over the head with it to see what you can do. And but I've never had that itch that Judy's had or you've had, Tim. I kind of like. I like being like, how Daniel Day-Lewis is, or certain these kind of actors. I just like implementing the vision that you guys have. I get pleasure out of that because I know from talking to a lot of directors how hard it is to find actors that you can talk a dialogue to, because right now in American theater, the rehearsal process is so damn fast.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So you need people on the same page. You need especially if you're playing a lead, you need the director to know that he doesn't or she doesn't have to worry about you, that you're setting the tone for the rest of the actors. If you come to work and you're the harder work, I worked with Lisa Otami a few times, and I learned that from her, just there's nothing beats hard work.
Yeah.
And that's how we show it,
Yeah,
and
I think
nothing like excellent.
Similar to Judy, I think branching into direct, it definitely had to do with wanting to have more control over my creativity and my ability to collaborate with others, to be able to take a script and put the vision, to be able to have more of a say in how and who, where and why, and in that process, I had directed Othello, and it was such a thrill to be part of it all, to sit there and study and study and study that script, and to dream and envision and come up with ideas, but then to begin with the process with auditions, and to really to go in with an open mind and be like, show me something, let's see. I mean, there were all kinds of people who went out for all of the different roles, including there was one fantastic woman who auditioned for Iago, and I'm like, why not? And I did ultimately some, gender switching as far as the casting, I was like, well, there's no reason why this character can't be a woman. Like, why not? And then certainly with respect to ethnicity, I mean, it was already in my mind, yes, that I wanted to have a multi-ethnic cast. That while it was important that Othello be a Black man and that Desdemona not be, but other than that, I'm like, well, this is not the story I'm not telling. The story I'm telling is not one, this world that created was not one in which Othello was the one and only Black person to be seen for miles and miles. He had some other things going on, and this was, just chose a different angle of his character to express that would allow for me to be able to have a multi-ethnic cast. It wasn't about him being this isolated man, this Black man only. But yeah, I mean,
that's why I love going to the Met, by the way, Tim.
Opened up opportunities just as writing has, and so.
Yeah. That's why I love going to the Met when I lived in New York, because you can go in any section and watch those paintings, and you always see one of us.
Yeah.
And you're like, so what's that guy's story?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's his story? What's her story? Mm-hmm. And you go, well, there we are in every facet of history.
That's right. We were there. We were there.
We were there.
Yeah.
And so that world that you're thinking of is not far-fetched.
No.
If you're really, like right now, I'm reading this book called, it's an African Samurai. It's based on a true story of an African warrior who was hired by the Jesuits to be a bodyguard, but it takes place in 1500s Japan.
Wow.
But it's based on a true story. So I thought it was just but when I started reading, I'm like, oh my God, no, these people are real. So now I'm into this book, and it's a history lesson, not only this character, but of the slave trade, not just the African slave trade, the slave trade that happened in Asia. They're just breaking it down like what is old is new.
I'm writing that down, Adrian. That's amazing.
And the book is it's turning into this beautiful history lesson of the 1500s and what's going on, and how the spread of Christianity and all that kind of stuff. And then again, here's this character again. I'm like, who would have known, right? So here's this guy, and they do his background. So he's the main bodyguard to the main guy the Pope hired to spread this thing in Japan. So this guy, think about it, he knows like 8 different languages already. He knows he speaks Chinese, Indian, Portuguese, Spanish, and now he's learning Japanese. Right?
Wow.
So, and these are the stories I think that even our young people don't know about. They really don't know. Like, no, you have to understand that our stories have been hidden through history, subjected for the same way you feel now, to that proverbial neck thing on your neck. The reason why you feel this way is because your history has been hidden from you. You walked this earth a long time ago as kings, as scholars, as artists, and unless you and it's sad that you have to take an African American studies class or history class in college to find out all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And those courses should be mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So cultures, all cultures should have that in colleges, not just Black culture, Latino culture, Asian culture. Because what's happening in this country right now, we're showing how really narrow you don't realize what's, this country now is changing. And what's happening now, everybody's saying is the soul of the country it is, because what's happening now, that old stuff is going away. No matter how much they're trying to stop it right now, what they can't understand is like, we all are moving forward no matter what.
Yep.
And that's why it's so nasty. And that's why it's so ugly, because all our dreams are out.
Mm-hmm.
The president is that drunk grandpa who finally aired everybody's dirty laundry. And now we have to reckon with it.
Yep.
And it's ugly.
Yeah. Well, I always say it must be so difficult to have been so entitled for so long that you don't even realize you're entitled. And suddenly someone's saying, that entitlement that you didn't even know you had, it's being taken away from you. That must be frightening, and I'm sure for people, they feel like I've been sold a bill of goods because that's not how I was raised. That's not how I was promised. How dare you try to come and take something away from me, when all we're saying is we're not trying to take anything away from you. We just want a level playing field. That's all.
It.
So
and people like myself, I think, scare the hell out of some of them, because I really don't care. You know what I mean? At this point, because it's 2020 and it's
enough already.
I don't need to teach you anything at this point.
Yeah.
This is what I said. Hey, so there was this whole conversation that took place. There was a forum that was done shortly after the killing of George Floyd at one of the theater companies, one of the personal theater companies in town. And it was a great conversation. It was, a lot of actors of color participated. And one of the things that was talked about was, if you're going to start, and this, one of the artists of color is very prominent in the community, and I have such respect for him. Because he's been around for a while, he has had some experiences in which things that have been done, or cast differently have been met with resistance from the audience. And so he talked about kind of like, you need to sort of take the audience along with you, kind of whether it's do a little pre-show talk or a show talk back, so that they can, have a chance to so you can take them along on the journey with you. And to me, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't really know about this. I'm like, I don't really want to have to explain anything, or teach anybody anything or whatever. I'm just, you check yourself. If you are watching a show and it's been cast differently than you would expect, and you're thinking, and you have a resistance to, then you do your own learning from that. You take it in and be like, oh, notice how you feel about it, or that you're like, that you have to acknowledge that you had an expectation that the character be a white character, or or whatever it is, So I don't know. I still get riled up about it. So I need to have a look.
But they can't say that stuff anymore, because
I don't feel like coddling anybody. I just feel like at this time there is no excuse. And if it's an issue for you, then you need to look at that. Like, I don't need to look at it with you. Go look at it, figure it out. And then, come back to the theater. You're prepared to be open. I mean, what is theater for? What is it for? If not to go on the journey and to learn something new, and to be affected, and to be, to be changed somehow. So if you're gonna come and be all rigid, be like, whoa, I mean, it's good, except that, that there's some casting stuff. I thought this Boston family was getting all white, and I was like not real sure why there were that, Black girlfriend, whatever it is, like that's on you. It's not on, that's on you. So you deal with that.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's just no, it's just you got to keep. That's why I said you let your work speak for yourself. You just do it, and that's what I say. I think sometimes it scares people when you have that attitude, when it's kind of, you got nothing to lose, really. At this point, I've been doing this for how long now? That stuff doesn't bother me anymore. It never really did, but you have to have, it's not a thick skin. And I hate that. That's like kind of brushing off the stuff that does happen. But what you have to have is a focus and a purpose. And talking to some of the older brothers who I've had a chance to work with, some guys who've been very successful in this business, they've expounded great wisdom to me. How to comport myself, how to handle myself when I'm on set, when I'm in rehearsal, if I get a lead, if you're supporting. They just, because it is a different set of there's a different set of standards, right? So, absolutely. And those guys, they've had long careers because they learned that lesson quickly, and they're able to have very eclectic careers from it. So it's just been great wisdom, and I pass it on to the young actors who ask me, no matter what color they are at this point. I just go, this is how you go. You got to be professional, right, in this business. I remember I did one of my first plays with Kenny Leon, and it was, all of us were like young 20-something-year-old guys. And I remember the first rehearsal, he said, I've called every director you've ever worked with about every one of you. Now, I'd worked with him before. He goes, I know about Adrian, but I remember the faces of the other actors. They were like, and he was like, because you have to understand, he said, this is a very small business in a small community, and people talk. And he was, and that he's not working on in his career, but I learned, learning from his feet about how he used to go about his business. So these guys come in your life, and teachers like Judy, who demand excellence of you, because she can tell you, I was one of 3 actors of color in my class, right? Class of 32. And I was the youngest. Yeah, I was the youngest,
He was a teenager.
Like
you were
I was
a teenager.
19 when I got in there, and I was hanging out, and everybody else.
Oh my gosh. So this was only 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I thought it was, so there was another teacher there. Judy knows him, Harold Surratt, who I still talk to this day, almost every week.
Oh, how's he doing? How's he doing?
Great.
Oh, please tell him I said hello. I think about Harold.
Oh no, I'll tell him.
and not only tell him, tell Harold, and this, I'm so glad you mentioned this. Tell Harold that I'm finally directing, because the first time someone approached me about directing, I was with Harold and I did a play together, by the way. We did 12th Night together and had a fantastic time. He was the sexiest Toby Belch in the world. They put him in black leather, and I'm like, woof, he was great. He was fabulous. But around that time, people started asking me about directing, and I kept saying to Harold, oh, Harold, I can't be a director. I'm no good. What do I know about being a director? And Harold was like, Judy, you've been teaching for 20 years. You've worked with a bunch of directors. You know what to do. But I was like, no, I can't. So please tell Harold he was right.
Yeah, no, he's
I
great.
love it.
He's been one of those guys, and
love Harold.
Yeah, no. Well, if you got a project, we're ready for you.
Okay, well, good to know.
Right.
Okay, that's great to know. Because you're right.
I'm trying to get him to come out to the West Coast.
And I'll travel. I will travel.
Yeah, he's in New Jersey, but I'm trying to get
travel
him to come
for work.
Yeah.
We're gonna just about ready to wrap up. I like what Adrian's saying about wisdom that he passes on to young actors, and Judy, do you have anything that you so word wisdom for young actors, and particularly young actors of color who are in the business, and what did you pass on to
I
them?
think that probably what Adrian was saying, I probably said that to him back in the day, which is the one thing they can't take away from you is your talent and your ability to be a hard worker and the easiest person in the world to work with. Because he's right, as a director now, I absolutely, if there are two actors and they both have similar talent, but one I've heard is kind of a nightmare or could be difficult, and the other one is like, oh, love working with them. I'll always choose the person that's easier to work with, even if maybe they're not as wonderful as the other person, because I have to work with them, especially in the theater when you're together for such a long time. So always, because I teach, I always tell my students, talent is a given. You all are here because you have talent. It's what you do with the talent. So be the hardest work. The best student is always the one who's not the most talented, but who is talented and is the hardest worker, because that will always serve you in no matter what you do in life. So do your work. That's my piece of advice.
And I'll add on that, because Harold and Judy were, and I say hard on me, not in the terms of like they were like, but once they saw the talent, I mean, and Harold told me this once I was like, he came to see me in a play when I was doing a play in Santa Rita in LA. And I was really nervous because, you know, there's your teacher. And then he saw me like years later in another play. And I'm like, well, I've seen you since I was like, you know, once I first started. And he was just like, always just, it was a demand for excellence because they saw the talent. And I'm glad I had the kind of makeup that I didn't shy away from that, and that they helped me grow and continue to grow, because there's still a lot of learning to do. And so I leave that, you know, finding those people in your life that help you that way is also important. So thank you, Judy. Always
welcome. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you. I appreciate this. This is great for taking the time. I've, made mental notes on all of the things that you said that I will take out of this conversation. And best of luck moving forward in the next projects that you're working on. And, just keep on.
Absolutely. And I hope that we all can, next time we all see each other, we'll be able to be in the same room. Wouldn't that be nice?
Definitely. That'd be great.
All right. So take care.
And Judy, I'll catch up with you. I want to catch up with you.
So you got it. Well, you know where I am now, man.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So great to see you.
Great to see you. Bye. Thank you.